I spent 10 years saving every penny to finally get my dream apartment. Then one morning, I woke up to hard knocking. It was my dad, standing there with my jobless brother. He said, "You're letting him stay here." I just looked at them, laughed, and that knock on my door wasn't just an interruption. It was the precise moment my entire life started to unravel. Because standing there were the two men who'd tear down everything I'd built: my father, William, and my brother, Mason. I was Caleb, 32 years old, and for a decade I'd fought tooth and nail to escape a childhood that never felt like mine. While other kids played, I scrubbed floors, clipped coupons, and pretended it didn't bother me that Mason never lifted a finger. He always got the new toys, the praise, the extra slice of cake. I got the lectures, the guilt. Years of saving, hustling, 2 jobs, night school. It finally paid off. My dream apartment. Quiet neighborhood. Big windows, a balcony overlooking the city skyline. Not huge, but it was mine. Every inch of it bought with sacrifice. I'd only been moved in 3 weeks when it happened. I can still picture the smell of fresh paint mixed with coffee that first morning. Mattress on the floor, boxes everywhere, no bed frame yet. But it was peace. For the first time, no yelling, no demands for money. I could breathe. I could be still. I could finally build a life on my own terms. Then the knock came. Around 7:30 a.m. on a Saturday. I'd planned to sleep in, a rare luxury. No alarms, no emails, just me, my blanket, maybe pancakes. The knock started as a tap, then grew aggressive, like someone trying to pound through the door. I groaned, peeling myself from the mattress and dragging myself to the peephole. I expected a neighbor, maybe a package delivery gone wrong. But my stomach dropped. It was William. And behind him, arms crossed, wearing that familiar smug look, was Mason. I hesitated. Something felt off. William and I hadn't spoken in weeks. Our last conversation ended with him accusing me of forgetting where I came from. I almost kept the door shut, but that ingrained part of me, the part that said "don't be rude," gave in. I cracked it open, blinking away sleep. Morning, I croaked, my voice still thick. "Everything okay?" William didn't waste a second. He shoved the door open fully and walked right in like he owned the place. Mason followed, trailing a duffel bag that looked like it hadn't been zipped properly in years. I just stood there, stunned, watching them make themselves comfortable. William sat on the armrest. Mason dropped his bag with a thud and flopped onto the cushion like he was auditioning for a beer commercial. "We need to talk," William said. I didn't move. "About what?" He nodded toward Mason. "He's going to stay here for a while." I blinked. "What?" "He needs a place to get back on his feet," William continued, as if this were a pre-planned intervention and I was just the final step. "You've got space." "It makes sense." Mason didn't say a word, just chewed gum, bouncing his kneeboard. I could feel my blood pressure rising. My apartment was 1 bedroom. I didn't have a sofa bed. I didn't even have enough towels for 2 people yet. And they were just assuming. I shook my head. "No. I'm sorry, but that's not going to happen." William raised an eyebrow as if I'd spoken in another language. "Caleb, don't be selfish." "Selfish," I repeated, louder than I intended. "I just moved in. I've worked for 10 years to get here. I finally have something that's mine. And you want me to what?" "Give it up so Mason can crash on my couch indefinitely." "He's your brother," William said, as if that explained everything. "He's family." I looked at Mason. Still silent. No apology, no explanation, just that smug, entitled smirk I'd grown up with. The smirk that always said, "I'll get what I want eventually." I took a deep breath. "And what exactly happened to your apartment?" I asked him directly. Mason shrugged. "Didn't pay rent. That was it. No shame, no excuse, just pure indifference. Like consequences didn't matter because someone would always catch him when he fell." William stood, walking toward me like he was about to deliver some righteous speech. "He's had a rough time. You wouldn't understand because everything's been handed to you lately." I actually laughed. "Handed to me?" "I worked 2 jobs and went to school for 6 years straight. I slept in my car for 3 months in 2017 because you refused to co-sign for a lease. Don't talk to me about being handed anything." William's face hardened, like he was remembering something inconvenient, but he didn't back down. This is temporary. A few weeks, that's all. Just until he finds work. I was about to speak when Mason finally piped up. Chill, man. It's not a big deal. I'll stay out of your way. That's when I knew. They'd already made the decision for me. This wasn't a request. It was a demand dressed as a family favor. I crossed my arms. No, he's not staying here. William narrowed his eyes. You're really going to turn your back on your own brother? You turned your back on me years ago, I said quietly. A long silence stretched between us. William looked at me like I was some ungrateful stranger. Mason looked annoyed, as if I'd just canceled his vacation. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel guilty. I felt angry, but I didn't yell. I didn't scream. I just stood there, waiting for them to justify barging into my life uninvited, expecting me to sacrifice everything I'd built because they thought I owed them. Then William said something I'll never forget. You wouldn't even have this apartment if it weren't for us. That was the line. The exact moment things shifted from frustrating to terrifying. Everything inside me began to shift. I looked around. The walls I painted, the couch I assembled, the coffee table I restored. Every dollar, every hour, every sacrifice. It had all led here, and now they were trying to rewrite history, claiming I'd been carried on their shoulders. I laughed. Quietly at first, then louder, then full-blown, catching both of them off guard. William stepped back, confused. What's so funny? I stopped laughing just long enough to meet his eyes. You really think I owe you? After everything. Mason looked away, probably realizing this wasn't going to go their way. But William wasn't done. He wasn't the type to back down when his authority was questioned. If you're not going to do the right thing, he said, his voice dangerously calm, maybe we'll have to make you. I stood there, barefoot on the hardwood floor, the morning chill creeping up my legs. That maybe we'll have to make you hung in the air. He wasn't yelling. That made it worse. It was that calm, passive-aggressive tone I knew too well, the tone he used when he punished me without raising his voice, the one that made you feel crazy for pushing back. But I wasn't 16 anymore. And this wasn't his house. You're threatening. Me now? I asked, my voice low. Don't be dramatic, he scoffed, waving it off. All I'm saying is, sometimes you need to be reminded of your place in the family. My place? I repeated, stunned. You mean the one where I was the backup parent? The live-in babysitter, the walking wallet. Mason snorted. Dude, stop acting like you were Cinderella. I turned to him. You want to talk about acting? You've been faking effort your whole life. How many jobs have you quit this year alone? He shrugged, unbothered. Jobs suck. I clenched my jaw. My hands were trembling slightly, not from fear, but from the pressure of years of swallowing every ounce of resentment just to keep the peace. This wasn't just about him crashing on my couch. It was everything. The forgotten birthdays, the support I never got, the way William had turned me into the family scapegoat while Mason coasted through life on a golden raft of low expectations. William finally took a step closer, trying to regain control. You're blowing this out of proportion. He needs help. You have help to give. Why is that so hard? I didn't respond. I just walked to the door and opened it wide. You both need to leave now. They left eventually, not with remorse, just grumbling words like ungrateful and selfish. Mason made sure to slam the door on his way out. I didn't sleep the rest of that day. I just sat on my mattress, staring at the ceiling. I knew they'd come back. That much entitlement doesn't just go away after one failed ambush. And sure enough, the text started the next morning. William, I talked to Aunt Brenda. She agrees you're being unreasonable. Mason, you got a spare key? I might drop by to grab some stuff. William, this is your brother, Caleb. He's not some stranger. You have a duty. By the end of the week, I was blocking numbers left and right. I told them no. That should have been enough. But the thing about people like William? They don't respect boundaries unless they're enforced with brick walls and barbed wire. So, when I came home one evening and saw Mr. Henderson, the building manager, chatting with Mason outside, I knew something was up. I walked up calmly, shopping bags in hand. Hey, I said. Mason grinned like we were best buds. What's up, bro? Just telling Mr. Henderson here I used to live with you. Thought I'd see the place again. Mr. Henderson, a nice older guy who always greeted me with a wave, looked confused. You didn't say anything about moving in, Caleb. I didn't, I said sharply, locking eyes with Mason. He's not staying here. Mason's expression tightened. Come on, man. I told you I'd help with rent. You said that. You also said you wouldn't get kicked out of your last 2 places. He shrugged. They had stupid rules, like paying rent. Mason opened his mouth to respond, but saw Mr. Henderson watching and bit his tongue. He picked up his bag, muttered something under his breath, and walked off. I apologized to Mr. Henderson, who just nodded and said to keep him updated. I was grateful he hadn't just handed over a key to someone who claimed to be family, but the damage was already creeping in. That night, I found the side gate to the building propped open with a rock. A few days later, I spotted Mason again, this time at the cafe across the street, just sitting there watching the front of the building. When I caught his eye, he just smirked and looked away. I started checking the locks twice before bed. I bought a camera doorbell. I kept the balcony door locked, even though it was 10 floors up. Still, the messages kept coming. William, why are you being so cruel? You're acting like we're enemies. Aunt Brenda, your dad is heartbroken. Mason struggling. This is not who you are. Mason, you think you're better than me? You always have. I ignored them all, but that silence seemed to fuel them even more. I guess they weren't used to me standing my ground. Then came the tipping point. It was a Tuesday night. I remember because I was working late on a freelance project, something I'd taken on to cover the furniture I still needed. Around 10:30, I decided to take a break and run down to the corner store for snacks. I wasn't gone more than 15 minutes. When I got back, the front door of my apartment was slightly ajar. My heart stopped. I checked the lock. It hadn't been forced, which meant someone had a key. A spare. I tore through the drawer where I kept it. The small plastic case was gone. No sound from inside. I tiptoed in, quietly opening the bedroom door. He was there. Mason. Lying on my bed, shoes still on, phone in hand, scrolling like he owned the place. Empty food containers on the floor. My bathroom light was on. The shower was wet. My towels, my brand new towels, were crumpled on the floor. What the hell are you doing here? I choked out, my voice shaking. Mason didn't even flinch. Relax. I'm just crashing for the night. You broke into my apartment. I used the key. You stole the key. I snapped. You waited until I left and you let yourself in. Mason sat up, annoyed. Dude, stop being so dramatic. You know William said I could stay. William doesn't live here. I do. Well, maybe if you'd just grown a spine earlier, we wouldn't have to do this the hard way. That line hit me like a slap. He wanted me to fight back. He thought this was just another power play, another tug-of-war he could win by being more shameless than me. He'd grown up seeing me bend. Bend under William's pressure, under guilt, under obligation, and he assumed I'd bend again. But something broke in me that night. I walked to the closet, pulled out a garbage bag, and began throwing his stuff in it. Mason jumped up. Yo, what the hell are you doing? You're leaving now. He moved toward me like he was going to grab the bag, but I backed up fast. You lay a finger on me and I'm calling the cops. You wouldn't. He stopped. We stood there in a silent standoff. Two brothers who hadn't really spoken like real siblings in years, now enemies in a war neither of us fully understood. The air between us was thick with everything we never said. Every moment I'd cleaned up his mess. Every time William praised him while scolding me. Every year I spent fixing the family's problems while they let him burn the place down. You think you're so high and mighty now? Mason said finally, eyes narrowed. You think you're better than us? I don't think I'm better, I said. I think I'm done. He left. Not quietly, of course. He slammed. Things cursed under his breath, accused me of being heartless. But he left. I locked the door behind him and called Mr. Henderson that night. We changed the locks the next morning. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. Just when I thought I could breathe again, something happened that knocked the wind out of me completely. The next day, I got a call from my bank. Someone had tried to open a joint checking account using my name. My credit had been pulled. A new phone line was activated under my identity. I didn't understand how until I remembered. A year ago, before I moved, I'd left a file of old documents at William's house. Stuff I thought I'd tossed, an expired ID, old utility bills, a printout of my social security number from when I'd been trying to correct a tax error. I'd meant to shred it. I never did. Now I was staring down the barrel of a stolen identity, and I had a pretty good idea who was behind it. I filed a fraud report that same day. I froze my credit. I spent hours on the phone with banks, credit bureaus, the phone company. The entire time, one thought burned through my skull like fire. They weren't just trying to leech off me anymore. They were trying to be me. They weren't just testing boundaries. They were trying to erase them. And that's when I knew this wasn't about family anymore. This was war. Rock bottom doesn't always feel like a dramatic crash. Sometimes it's a quiet, dull ache. A slow unraveling you don't fully notice until you're sitting on your kitchen floor at 2 a.m. with a frozen pizza burning in the oven, your credit frozen, and your sense of trust fractured like a dropped mirror. That's where I was 1 week after filing the fraud reports. A pile of paperwork on the table. Missed calls from banks and credit agencies. A notice from my landlord informing me of disturbances reported by other tenants. Apparently, Mason had been loitering, trying to get back what was his. My locks had been changed, my passwords updated, my mailbox rerouted, but I still felt like a stranger in my own home. Paranoid. On edge. Angry. And the worst part? No one believed me. When I tried to explain to Aunt Brenda what had happened, that I suspected Mason had used my old documents to impersonate me, she gasped. Not out of shock, but offense. You're accusing your own brother of a federal crime, Caleb? Do you hear yourself? I did. And for the first time, I wasn't backing down. Yes, I do. She hung up on me. A few days later, William called. Not to apologize, not even to check on me, but to scold me for airing family laundry in a fraud report that might put Mason in danger. His actual words were, "You're trying to destroy his future over some papers and a misunderstanding. You should have come to me first." I laughed bitterly. The last time I came to you, you told me to let him live here without asking. You think you're the victim in all this. He snapped. You have everything. You always have, and now you want to kick your brother while he's down. That's when I stopped responding completely. I cut them off cold and clean. Blocked numbers, deleted contacts. I didn't send a dramatic goodbye or demand closure. I just let the silence grow between us like a canyon because I finally understood something. They weren't going to change, but I could. That realization hurt. It felt like grieving people who were still alive. I'd always been the fixer, the one who kept the family tied together with duct tape and grit. I was the one who remembered birthdays, who showed up at holidays, who took the emotional temperature of every room I walked into. I knew when William was simmering, when Mason was about to cause trouble, when Mom, before she passed, was trying not to cry in the kitchen. I carried all of that. And now I wasn't. The first week of silence was brutal. The guilt crept in like fog. Was I being heartless? Was I really abandoning them? But then I'd look at the fraud report pinned to my fridge, or the charges I didn't make on a gas card in Mason's hometown, and the fog would burn away. I wasn't being cruel. I was protecting myself. But it wasn't easy. My freelance clients dried up. I was too distracted to deliver consistent work. The stress gnawed at my appetite. I lost weight. I stopped going to the gym. My skin broke out. I looked in the mirror one morning and didn't recognize the man staring back. Sunken eyes, stubble, exhaustion. I hit my lowest point. 2 weeks after the identity theft, I was sitting in a government office waiting for a new social security card, surrounded by the hum of fluorescent lights and people arguing with clerks. A woman 2 seats down was crying softly. An older man offered her a tissue. I just sat there, numb. That's when I checked my email and saw it. A rejection from an apartment insurance claim I didn't even remember filing. Apparently, someone, likely Mason, had tried to submit a fake claim using my address and name. That was it. That was the moment I truly broke. I walked out of that office, sank onto the curb, and just broke. The tears came then, hot and stinging. I hadn't cried like that in years. I wasn't even sure what I was crying for anymore. My stolen identity, my broken family, the decade I spent building a life they tried to hijack. I don't know how long I sat there. But when I finally stood up, something felt different. Not better, just cleared. Like I'd finally reached the bottom of the well. There was nowhere else to sink. That's where the rebuilding began. Quietly, privately. No announcements, no big comeback speeches, just one small decision at a time. First, I got my finances in order. I went through every account, every charge, every document. I filed police reports, submitted affidavits, called companies until my throat hurt. I talked to 3 different fraud investigators. I learned more about identity theft in a week than I ever wanted to know. It was exhausting, but every time I crossed something off my list, I felt a little stronger, like I was slowly dragging myself out of the pit. Then I started writing again. Not just client work, but journaling. At first, it was just rants, anger scrawled across the page like graffiti. But slowly that turned into reflection. I wrote about my childhood, about the things I'd ignored for years. The time I cleaned the kitchen after Mason's party while William yelled at me for being dramatic. The time Mason stole $500 from my drawer and blamed a cousin. The Christmas when I gave up my bonus to pay the electric bill and no one thanked me. Writing helped me remember that I wasn't crazy, that I had been mistreated, that setting boundaries now wasn't betrayal, it was survival. Around that time, I found a community forum for people dealing with family estrangement. It wasn't Reddit, just a quiet corner of the internet where people like me shared stories. Some were darker than mine, some were eerily similar. I read for hours. For the first time, I didn't feel alone. One comment stuck with me: "You're not heartless for walking away. You're brave for breaking the cycle." I printed that out and taped it above my desk. As my mind cleared, opportunities started creeping back in. A former freelance client reached out, apologizing for the ghosting. He'd had a death in the family and needed help again. I took the gig, did good work. He referred me to 2 others. Within a month, I had a full plate again. Money started coming in. I replaced the mattress with a real bed frame. I bought plants for the windows. I started cooking again. Real meals, not frozen ones. On a random Tuesday night, I made pasta with garlic bread and ate it on the balcony, music playing softly behind me. It wasn't fancy, but it felt like life. I even reached out to a therapist. That part scared me. I'd always been the handle-it-myself type. But something about talking to a neutral person, someone who didn't know my family, who wouldn't guilt me or twist things, felt necessary. It was hard at first. I didn't know where to begin. But once I opened the floodgates, it all came rushing out. My childhood, the favoritism, the way I was made to feel like a background character in my own life. My therapist, Dr. Emily, didn't offer magical solutions. She just listened, validated, helped me reframe things. You weren't loved conditionally. You were used conditionally. That line hit me in the chest. She helped me realize I'd spent so long trying to earn love that was never given freely. That I kept trying to prove myself through achievements, generosity, obedience, just to get scraps of approval from people who saw me as a utility, not a son. Week by week, session by session, I started letting go of that narrative. I wasn't broken. I wasn't mean. I wasn't selfish. I was just done being the family's emotional punching bag. The rise wasn't fast. It wasn't cinematic. No training montages or big breakthroughs, just small victories, rebuilding routines, relearning joy. One of those victories came on a Sunday morning when I walked past a local photography gallery downtown. I'd always loved photography, but stopped shooting when things got too chaotic. That morning, I walked in and asked about community exhibits. The woman at the desk, a soft-spoken curator named Sophia, told me about a small show coming up. "You should submit something," she said. So I did. I pulled out my old camera, took walks around the city, captured details, cracks in sidewalks, birds on fire escapes, elderly couples holding hands. I submitted 3 black and white prints. Nothing dramatic, just quiet moments of life continuing. A month later, one of them was chosen for display. It wasn't sold. It didn't go viral. But it meant something. That moment, The night I stood at the gallery looking at my photo hanging on the wall with my name printed underneath. It felt like proof that I could create something beautiful without anyone's permission, without anyone stealing it, without anyone twisting it into guilt. I was rebuilding. And I wasn't done yet. But just when I thought the worst was behind me, a letter arrived. Plain envelope, no return address. Inside, just a single sheet of paper, typed, no greeting, no signature. You think this is over, but you owe us more than you know. You'll regret turning your back on your own blood. We're not done. My hands went cold. I reread it 3 times. Same feeling each time. Dread. The ink was smudged slightly on one corner. The paper was cheap. But the message was clear. They weren't finished. They hadn't learned. They were planning something. And I knew deep in my gut, this wasn't just about me anymore. It was about everything they thought they could still take. And for the first time, I didn't just want to protect myself. I wanted justice. I didn't sleep the night I got the letter. I kept the envelope on my kitchen counter under a ceramic mug, like it might float away if I didn't weigh it down. The words kept repeating in my head like an itch I couldn't reach. You think this is over, but you owe us more than you know. We're not done. It wasn't signed, but I didn't need a signature. The voice was clear. That blend of self-righteous victimhood and subtle threat. It had William written all over it. And Mason? Well, he didn't usually speak in complete sentences, but he had no problem delivering messages, especially if they came with a middle finger and a smirk. But something had changed in me since all this started 6 months ago. The old me might have panicked. Might have reached out, tried to reason with them, tried to fix things, tried to remind them that I wasn't the enemy. But that man, the one who begged for scraps of decency from people who saw him as disposable, he didn't live here anymore. And the one who replaced him? He was done playing defense. I spent the next morning pacing. No music, no podcasts, just pacing, thinking. Not about revenge at first. Not really. I told myself I was just protecting myself, that I needed to be prepared in case they escalated. But the longer I stared at that letter, the clearer it became. This wasn't about a one-time boundary being crossed. This was a campaign. They weren't just trying to guilt me. They were trying to reclaim me. So, I made a decision. I wasn't going to retaliate in anger. I was going to bury them with truth. I started where? All great plans begin, with documentation. I pulled out every file I had. Bank statements, fraud reports, screenshots of texts, emails, social media posts. I created a timeline from the first knock on my door to the day I got that letter. I printed things, highlighted, labeled, annotated. I even included the building's security footage showing Mason loitering near the entrance weeks after he'd been banned from the property. I called the police and requested the official report on the attempted identity theft. It was a slow process, but it gave me a file number. Then I contacted the phone company and requested logs of the new line that had been opened in my name. I wasn't doing this to press charges yet. Not yet. But I wanted to be ready, because the next time they tried something, I wouldn't be explaining myself. I'd be presenting evidence. Once the foundation was set, I did something I knew would make things personal. I filed a civil no-contact order against Mason. I didn't expect it to go through right away. Courts take time, and I wasn't dealing with someone who'd physically harmed me, but I had enough paperwork to show a pattern: unauthorized entry, identity theft, harassment, threats. The judge scheduled a hearing 2 weeks out and approved a temporary protection order in the meantime. That meant Mason couldn't come near me or my home without risking arrest. And when the court date came, I would be ready. But I wasn't done, because Mason and William had gotten comfortable. Too comfortable. They'd spent their lives skating past consequences, leaning on other people's reputations to buffer their own failures. So, I wanted this to sting in the way that only exposure could. I made sure the lawsuit filings were public. I submitted documentation to the credit agencies and added William's name to the investigation. I alerted the notary commission about the forged paperwork. And then I went one step further. I reached out to my old church. Back in the day, William used to lead community projects there, food drives, fundraisers. He liked being seen as the pillar of the community. It was one of the few places he still had a good reputation. So I sent them the truth. Every document, every claim, every report. Not with malice, not with a demand, just the facts. The fallout came fast. The first real break happened in court. Mason didn't show up to the restraining order hearing, but my evidence did. The judge barely blinked before extending the protection order for a full 2 years. Mason couldn't come within 500 feet of me, my home, or my place of work. Any violation would be immediate grounds for arrest. Then came the criminal investigation. It started slow: interviews, phone calls, document authentication. But once they confirmed the forgery on the property paperwork, things accelerated. The authorities reached out to the notary, William's friend. Under pressure, the guy admitted he'd stamped the document without both parties present, a direct violation. His license was suspended. William was named as a co-conspirator. A few weeks later, Jessica forwarded me a copy of the filed charges: forgery, attempted fraud, misrepresentation of legal ownership. Mason and William were both served. And then came the silence. No more texts, no more emails, just void. Until one morning, I checked the news. It was a local story, small headline: community organizer and son charged in property fraud scheme. It wasn't splashed across national headlines or anything, but it was there. Their names, their photos, a tidy summary of what they tried to pull. And that was enough. Enough for the church to distance itself, enough for old friends to stop calling, enough for their community halo to crack. But the real closure came a few weeks later. I was at home, drinking coffee, listening to a blues playlist, when there was a knock at the door. I checked the camera feed. It was William. Alone. Shoulders hunched, no Mason in sight, no bag, no swagger, just him. He looked older, tired, like life had finally caught up. I didn't answer. He knocked again, waited. Then eventually, he pulled out a piece of paper, folded it neatly, and slipped it under the door. I let it sit there for an hour before I picked it up. It was handwritten. "Caleb, I never thought it would come to this. I guess I believed deep down that you'd always let us back in. That's what you do. You forgive. You fix. But I pushed too far. I let Mason pull me into something I can't undo. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just want you to know I'm sorry. I lost my son long before any of this. I just didn't realize it until now. William." I read it once, then again. Then I folded it, tucked it away in a drawer, and left it there. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just felt empty. A quiet, profound finality. A few months passed. The lawsuit wrapped up in my favor. They were ordered to pay restitution. Nothing life-changing, just enough to cover the legal fees and the damage they caused. Mason tried to dodge the payments, but the court attached it to his tax records. William cooperated, probably part of his deal to avoid jail time. My name was cleared, my credit restored. And me? I lived. Really lived. I kept teaching photography, picked up a few local clients, even started dating again, a woman named Sarah who worked at the coffee shop around the corner. First date was awkward. Second was better. Third, that one felt like maybe, just maybe, I was finally walking into something good. I didn't talk about my family much, but I didn't hide them either. They were a chapter in my story, not the whole book. One evening, Sarah asked me why I didn't have any pictures of my childhood on the walls. I just smiled. "Because my life started here," I said, gesturing to the windows, the city sky beyond, the room I had fought to protect. She nodded. That night, I took a photo from the balcony, a long exposure of the city lights stretching into the distance. I printed it the next day, framed it, and hung it above my desk. It wasn't just a picture. It was proof that sometimes the best revenge isn't destruction. It's survival. It's peace. It's walking away with your name intact, your soul untangled, and your future wide open, knowing they can never take it from you. What would you have done in my shoes?